Clare Chamberlain. I'm the past commander of Post 72 American Legion here in Crawfordsville. We're this morning here on May 22nd, 1993 at the beautiful Lane Place in Crawfordsville, Indiana. I might mention before we get into what we're here today for, that today is a beautiful day for those of you who will be watching in future years and future decades, generations. Today is a beautiful day. The farmers doing the agriculture work in 1993 are running some 3 weeks behind schedule in getting their crops in, but now we're wanting rain. We've had rain all spring, but now we're wanting rain to try to get the corn up so they'll have a good crop. What we've been doing over the past 2 years is interviewing veterans of World War II. Bob Wernley, a retired attorney here in Crawfordsville, in watching some of the Civil War documentaries on PBS on television, got to thinking it would be a shame in the future if we didn't get some live interviews with people who served in all theaters of war with various jobs in World War II. And I might say at this time, we have done some 30 of these interviews. All of them have been most interesting. There's really not been any repetition. World War II was a horrible war, fought on two fronts, in Europe and in Japan, in the Pacific, and we've just had lots of information that have come from our veterans. And so this morning, I might also say that our cameraman that's taking these pictures is Mike Hall, who is the executive director here at the Lane Place in Crawfordsville. These documents that we're making for future generations will be in the library for students and for families to check out in years to come. Like I said, they are available to the public. They are being made for the Montgomery County Historical Society. So now we're ready to get into our interview, which we have this morning here on May 22nd, 1993. I'm sure and I know that it's going to be a very interesting interview along a little bit different line than any of the other interviews that we've had. Ma'am, could I ask you what your name is?
My name is Helen Hubbard Cross.
I see. Were you born in Crawfordsville?
No, I was born on my grandpa Mannon's farm. His farm was on one end of Cloverdale, and that was my mother's farm. And my daddy was a Hubbard, and he was on the other end of Cloverdale on a farm. So, and we didn't come to Crawfordsville until it was time for me to be in first grade. Daddy was going to Wabash, and so when it was time for me to go to school, they moved here, and then we lived here ever after.
Yeah. What were your parents' names?
My daddy's name was Omer Hubbard, and my mother was Lucille Mannon.
I see. And they lived at Cloverdale, in the Cloverdale
on farms, yes.
On farms, I see. Yes. You came here then when you were in the first grade?
Right, middle school.
And went to the middle school, I see. Did you go through the schools, the regular schools here, the junior highs or the high school? And
well, junior high was at the high school, and yes, we went all the way to graduation.
Mm-hmm. Did you have brothers and sisters?
I had two brothers, younger, Bill and Jack.
Okay. Any sisters?
No sisters.
I see. If you don't mind telling me, what year did you graduate from Crawfordsville?
38. That's why I'm here.
1938, you're here for your 55th. Well, that is great. You're going to see several of your old friends, I'm sure.
I hope so.
Yes, that will be
I
just
came
great.
for my 50th, and I was very excited. That's the first time I've been back, and it was so much fun.
Did you know everyone?
No, the only reason I knew anyone was because they had our yearbook pictures in a little metal thing that you could put on, and when you looked at the picture, then you knew the person.
Yes. I had the pleasure of attending my 50th, and I knew almost all of the boys. They're men now, older men, but some of the ladies, it threw me. I really didn't recognize them, and they had to tell me who they were, which kind of surprised me.
You didn't have a picture?
No, we didn't have pictures. We had name tags on, but we didn't get them until later in our meeting, and so there was a time lapse, or maybe 20 minutes, that we didn't have any identification on before we got our tapes.
I hope they have a picture tonight, or I'll be lost.
That would be great. All right, you graduated in 1938 from Crawfordsville High School. Would I know, could you name just 2 or 3 people that I might know that you graduated with?
Well, I talked to several of the girls. I talked to Maxine Hafner and Belle Mitchell this week, and I don't know why they didn't get any letter about the reunion. Mm-hmm. And then Joanne Miller, who still lives here, but see, I can't remember her married name. Oh, she was married to Dr. Taylor, so it must be Joanne Taylor.
I see. Mm-hmm.
And let's see. Who else?
Chud in your class?
No. Chud McGoy, is he still here?
I can't answer that. I really can't. I can't answer that.
When I was going through the picture, I saw a great big picture of him. He was in the Air Corps and out in the Pacific.
Yeah. Was Dr. Kirtley from this area?
Yes, but
I think he was ahead of you.
I wasn't close to him, I know.
Yeah, I think he graduated maybe 5 or 10 years.
Eddie Randak is a physician, and he was in our class, and I met him the first time and the last time, and he's way out west someplace, practices OB way out west.
Well, you graduated from high school in 1938, then what did you do?
Then I went up to, didn't know what exactly to do, but someone around the corner from me had gone up to the home hospital in Lafayette and had become a nurse, so I thought, well, gee, okay. So I did it.
I see. You took nurses training?
Yes.
In Lafayette?
Yes, home hospital.
At home hospital.
You have to go to Purdue the first year and take all the regular subjects, and then
I see. Did
then
you?
I came back here to the surgery here.
After you graduated?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
As an RN?
Yes.
I see. And how many years did you work at Culver?
Well, this war thing was brewing, and I think I was there about 2 years, but I'm not sure.
I see.
And then all that was so weird.
Well, we have a new hospital now. So.
I passed it out there. What did they do with the old one?
Well, I'm not sure what they do with it. They did use it for apartments, but I hated to see that. It was a nice hospital, and I hated it when they closed it.
Well, Hawthorne Wallace, Dr. Hawthorne Wallace, and Dr. Collette, they were 2 surgeons that worked together, and Crawfordsville was very lucky to have them. They were good, very good, and a lot of places don't have that.
Well, you're getting close to the time now of World War II starting. Where were you when the Japs hit Pearl Harbor?
I remember we were all at home in our house, and the radio was turned on, and the family ended up in the living room with our mouths hanging open. That means war, doesn't it? Doesn't that mean war? You know, it was unbelievable that morning.
That's right.
It was a Sunday, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Sunday.
It was a Sunday. Then what did you do?
Well, you know, it was all strange and so forth. But the draft board, or whoever does it, told Dr. Wallace and Dr. Collette, one of them had to stay here to take care of people, and one of them had to go into the service. And then, I don't know what went on, but Dr. Wallace came to us and said that the University of Illinois was organizing an evacuation hospital, and they had, excuse me, asked him to be chief of surgery, and he was going to go to a meeting in Chicago, and he wanted we 3 girls to go with him and just see what it sounds like. And so we did. We went up to Chicago, I think twice, and they were totally organizing this group beforehand. And I don't suppose anybody but somebody like us remember, but we were being threatened by the media ever so often. We're going to have to draft nurses. We're going to have to draft nurses. Well, that meant if that happened, you would just go in alone and somebody would tell you where to go. So it became a temptation that you could see all these people and they were organizing it, and the one we knew the best was going to be chief of surgery. And so finally we signed up. Now in hindsight, I wouldn't have done that because we never were drafted, and my two brothers became prisoners. I should have been at home.
Yeah. What was the date that you went in the service?
Well, I like discharge thing there, but do you know, Ron?
I think it was about October the 15th,
1942.
42.
42. Yeah. Carolyn,
It was in the fall.
let's take a short break right this time, please. Okay, October 24th, 1942 is when you went in the service.
Right.
Where did you go?
Well, we girls, they sent us on a fast ship. The men went on Liberty ships with all the equipment, and they sent us.
we went to Kentucky first.
Yeah. Where did you go from Crawfordshire?
We were in the States quite a while. In fact, we were on two maneuvers, one with the 101st Airborne down in Tennessee, where we worked as a real hospital and took care of all the casualties. When they jumped, there were lots of casualties. And then another time we were on maneuvers in the mountains in West Virginia with a group that was learning to mountain climb and so forth.
I see.
And then we were at Camp Breckenridge, and when we were in camp and not practicing up in the woods someplace, we would work at the station hospital there. And
Were you married at this time?
Oh, no, we didn't get married till after we got home.
Okay. Then where did you go from Kentucky?
Well, we went to Tennessee, and we went to West Virginia.
Whereabouts there?
Elkins, West Virginia. And Tennessee, what was the town near us?
Portland.
What?
Portland.
Portland, I don't remember that. There was a town where we went in and took showers. I remember that, but that's about all I remember. But when the 101st would make a jump, the ambulances would be, you could look down the road and they would just be a long, long line of injuries coming in. And
When they hit the ground, they'd break their legs or...
all sorts of injuries, yes. And plus there was some disease. I don't know, but I was specialing. When surgery wasn't very busy, they'd give us other jobs. And I was specialing at night this boy who had diphtheria. And of course, you're not supposed to get diphtheria because you should have had your shots.
Right.
And what happened? Did it work or what? And he had a tracheotomy tube in. And you know, our beds in those tents are a little cot with those two ridges of boards on the side. Well, he was coughing all the time, and for some reason, even though it was tied in, that thing wouldn't stay in. So I sat on that little ridge on the side of that cot all night, holding that tube in, and I don't think he ever knew I was there. And one time later, I saw him all laughing and joking in the mess line, waiting to get food, and I thought, boy, I ought to go tell him, listen, I sat on that.
You saved his life.
I sat on that rod every night with you.
Yes.
But it got well.
When you went in, did you go in as a second lieutenant at
Yes.
that time?
Yes, we all did, yes.
Did you have to take some type of, we're backing up here a little bit now, did you take some type of training to learn how to salute and how an officer should...
We did that all the time until we left the country. We would go on bivouacs, and we used to have to go cross country. I often wonder what the farmers thought, because we had to go through the fences and everything, 4 miles in 40 minutes. We did that routinely, and in camp they would teach us to march and line up and all the things, all the military things.
I see. Then where did you go? From, I believe you said
Now,
Tennessee.
where are we?
Tennessee.
Well, we did Elkins after that, and then eventually we went to Fort Devens,
Where's
which
that?
is it's outside of Boston, isn't it? And we went there. We were getting ready to obviously go overseas, and But then we actually left on a boat from Newport News. Where did you guys leave from? There too, Newport News? But we went on we girls, now are we ready to go overseas now?
Yes.
Okay. They put us on a great big boat. It's the first time it had made a trip. I didn't find this out until I got seasick.
What kind of a ship was it?
It was a huge transport ship called the Billy Mitchell. And supposedly, they told us there were 5,000 men below deck. I don't know. They put us up in little bunks and so forth.
Nurses?
Yes.
How many were there of you?
Well, there was roughly 60 in our group, but there were other nurses on there. I don't know. There were others being transported.
I see.
And we were, they put us on the boat and we were waiting to leave, and we used to play bridge, so we were playing bridge, and I thought, what did I eat? I feel so sick. I didn't know a thing about seasickness. I loved to swim, and I wasn't the least bit afraid of water, and so I'm learning. I was seasick. Oh, was I seasick? So it turned out this boat was so new that they had not put the ballast in it. And when they got back from taking us to Casablanca, they were going to go to New York and have all this heavy stuff, is it cement or something, put in the bottom of the boat. Well, we rolled all the way over. It took us 7 days to...
Were you sick all the time you were on the way?
Well, the last couple of days I stood up a little, but yes. And I still get seasick. But that was how I learned. And they took us to Casablanca.
On this ship, did you have drills thinking that maybe the enemy submarines, U-boats might be around? Did you have any type of alerts?
Well, I'm sure they did practice something, but I was in sick bay, so it was that bad. So I don't know.
I was going to ask you how the food was on there, but I don't.
I didn't have any.
I don't think
I
that
didn't have any.
we should get into that. Well, you mentioned, Helen, where it took you 7 days,
Yes.
and you went to Casablanca.
We went to Casablanca, and they put us in some sort of a camp, and just, to wait. And there were some other nurses there.
Can you approximately recall what that date might be?
Well, I could see.
It's in March.
Of what year? 1943?
Service outside Continental U.S., 27 March 44. I came back 14 September 45.
Okay, you were there in 44 then. And you landed at Casablanca. Tell us about that. What you saw, and what you did. And...
Very nice officers club there. But it was...
Evidently you were feeling better.
Real good after that, for sure. But for a couple of weeks or 10 days or something or other, I'd be walking along and I would go off balance and one of my feet would go way up in the air, so it does do something to you. And very nice officers club. And it was up like on a third floor. And one day I went over and looked out the window, and it was just like this gray, shimmering cloud all over everyone down in the street. And I realized it was flies. So I think that's why they probably were on the third floor. I don't know.
How long did you stay in Casablanca?
Oh, very short time. Then they put us on a boxcar. The boxcars were small, a train, and we were in 3 layers, I think, in the boxcars, and it stopped quite often. I don't know, for fuel, or maybe they were delivering mail or something. And at the time, we didn't really understand. But after this Kuwaiti thing, all these years later, when they said that ladies were not allowed to drive cars and so forth, each time we would stop, they would have these men in there, just like Hollywood, with all their on the horses, and they would be lined up in a straight line, and they would not move. And of course, as soon as we would stop, we would open those side sliding doors so we could get some air into the boxcars. And they would stand there and stare at us. I don't know if anybody ever waved to them or not, but didn't mean anything to us at the time. And so to think that 50 years later, they're behaving like that in Kuwait still, so we must have been quite a shock to those men there. And so then they took us to Oran and to wait for the men. The men were to come to Oran, and they had a camp outside of Oran on the beach, and there was an officers' club there where they kept the nurses who were waiting, and there were a number of nurses. I don't remember what outfit they were waiting on, but there was a number of nurses besides us waiting there. And I think we were there probably about 5 days until they showed up. And
Then what did you do?
well, then we got ready to go over to Italy, and
How'd you get to Italy?
well, the girls went on a hospital ship. Did you bring all your ships in there with the equipment to Italy? You didn't unload till Italy, right?
Where did you
I wonder
land?
if the people on the camera realize I'm talking to my husband over there who was in the same outfit.
You can introduce him.
So anyway, then we went to Italy. And,
On a British hospital ship.
yeah,
On a British hospital ship.
right.
What was that like?
Oh, lovely. Very nice. And it's not rough now. You're not rolling around like you do on that land.
Where did you land in Italy?
Had lights all over it. In order to alert airplanes that this was a neutral ship. It was a hospital. Had big red crosses on it, painted on it. Painted white except for the red crosses.
Yeah, that might have meant something there. If it had been over in the South Pacific, that would have just been a target for the Japanese.
Right.
Because where did
I'm
you land?
very glad we were in Europe.
The interesting thing is when we went to eat, the British handed us a menu. And we had a choice of 5 entrees. And after living in tents in the desert, we asked the hospital men if we could order more than one. They said, you can order them all, Captain. And several of us ordered 2 or 3.
I don't remember that at all, so you see who does the eating in it.
You landed at
Naples, and they sent us to a place called Termi outside to wait because they had to go up the road and get all this set up. When we finally got set up, we were about 20, 25 miles north of Naples on the road to Rome. That picture I showed you is there.
was that area secure from the enemy then?
Well, I know
Yes.
Had the,
one night they had an air raid on Naples, and they had given us training that we were to get under our cot. So I got under my cot, and there was no one around. I thought, where is everybody? So I went out there. Everybody was watching the air raid, so because it was rather colorful, and it was far enough away from us that they didn't notice. And we were right near the Air Corps, and they entertained the girls with flights down into Vesuvius, and could go around the
oh yes.
rim down in there.
Interesting.
And it smelled so heavy of sulfur or something, I couldn't figure out, is this real air? Will this support this plane? They could do that. And they'd take us a lot of times on trips to Rome to get the mail. So we were having a good time while they were setting up.
I see. Then where did you go from Rome? Or Naples?
No. Well, then we started working.
Then you started working.
As soon as they got set up
Were you with,
north of...
were you with a team of doctors?
When I say all of them, I mean all the officers, all the doctors and so forth. And then we had about 500 enlisted men with us. There were about roughly 60 a week.
Corpsmen?
Yes. There were roughly about 60 a week girls, and there were 50-something other of the officers who were nearly all physicians. There were a few administrative, but very few. And then about 500 men. You see, our hospital was 750 beds, and when we were in Mataloni, we went up to 1,500 beds. Now, when you think of the civilian hospitals here, if they suddenly had to be 1,500 beds, they'd think, why, we can't do that. Well, we could. It was, the Mount Casino battle was going on, and you never see the majority of our patients at that time, you never see their picture in anything. Well, they were fighting there. They were Sinhalese from North Africa. They're French, and they wore the white sort of pajama type things. But that was the majority of our patients. And have you ever seen a picture of them fighting? You know, they were on our side, and we had them, and they got a little upset with us because they didn't understand our food. So finally one day they asked for a meeting. Of course, they didn't speak English. And what they wanted was more bread. They wanted a loaf of bread per person. That was what they were used to eating, was bread.
Is that right? How far were you, where you were set up and had the 1,500 beds? How far was that from a battle line, or
Well, Italy,
where our troops were engaging the enemy?
Italy is a small place, so it can't be very far to Casino.
About an hour's drive.
No more than that,
Say some 60,
hardly that.
60 miles or something like that.
No,
Well,
you had to drive slow with an ambulance.
Don't,
Oh, but
Don't
there
so
don't
far.
quote me, but you know,
30 miles.
when you look at Italy, it's a little place, and it wasn't too far to the
30 miles.
Mhm. Could you hear, where you were, could you hear cannon fire? Could you hear the
No,
guns?
no. One day we had an interesting experience. There was the Air Corps was over at that time to the west of us, but it was far enough away that we didn't even hear them. And you couldn't see them. There were lots of trees and everything. We couldn't see them. It was so hot that we had pulled the tables out of the mess tent and put them under trees because it was so hot. And we were eating out there in the open. And of course, we were using the ground, so of course it turns to dust. And we were sitting there, and we began to notice little of dust fly up in the air. And what is that? Why is it doing that? And then we went ahead eating and thinking about it. And about 20 minutes later, these Air Corps guys came dashing through our gate out the road, and anybody hurt? Anybody hurt?
I see. Yeah.
And
They cleared their guns.
it turned out that someone had cleared their guns, whatever that means, accidentally, and they knew that it had come in our direction. But I don't know how far those bullets shoot because you couldn't hear them over there landing and taking off and so forth.
Did you see any enemy aircraft?
No, I don't think
But
so.
except for the air raid in Naples.
Was that by the?
I don't think
Did you
so.
have an air raid by the Germans?
Oh, well, sure, it was the Germans, sure, when we were in Naples. But they wouldn't have paid any attention to us out there. But one thing we did see that was very, very impressive, about noon every day, our planes, you'd start hearing this, and our planes, in a large group, in a formation, would go to the east. I don't know where they went. And they would go for almost an hour. It was quite a sight. And that would happen several times a week. It was kind of a thrill to just, they never moved, you know, and all of them in this big formation and just kept, I don't know who they were beating on to the east over there. But I know before we left that location, I found out that my brother, Jack, was in Italy. You're not even supposed to find out things like that, but I did somehow.
How did you find out?
Well, I don't remember. I guess mother or daddy or somebody, they found out that he was in Italy. And the only place I knew was Bari, B-E-R-I, that had a big air thing. And so I was trying to get in touch with him by phone with a switchboard. Fine, you know, he's there and so forth. And then he had been shot down already and was missing.
Yes. We interviewed Jack.
Did he tell you that story about them landing on the pole?
Yes, he did a very fine job of talking about when he was captured and what they did with him and where he was imprisoned and how he went to Poland, I believe. It's been a while
Yes,
since we cut that
they,
tape.
They were both up there.
Yes, and then your brother Bill was captured too.
He was captured when I was down in Elkins, West Virginia. It was a horrible shock, and it took, it must have been over a year before they changed that missing to POW. You know, at first you get the missing and you don't know anything, and then you have to live with that for a long time. I think it was almost the end of the war before we found out that Jack was a POW. You're missing for so long.
In his interview, he tells that he was in Poland and he marched across Poland and Germany, and that was a terrible march. You've seen the tape, I believe. And I believe he said he sent a wire. He didn't have any money, but the Red Cross sent a wire from over there on Mother's Day. And your mother didn't even know that he was alive. And
it took so long for both the boys for us to have any hope. And
Jack did a terrific job of telling us about that. So would you, if he had not been captured, would you have been able to get to where he, any way you could have seen him?
yes, if I could have found out that he was there, sure, I'd get somebody to drive me over there, sure. But then, before I had a chance. And then we left there and made the invasion of southern France, which fortunately was, the Germans were running by then, and so
okay.
it wasn't bad.
You leave this 1,500-bed hospital in Italy.
But during that time, we went to Rome to see the Pope.
Did you see the Pope in Rome?
Yes, some boys took some of we girls up there. I don't know who they were. I don't know who had made the acquaintance. But we went in, what do they call those things that go on land and then they're like a boat and they go into the water?
Duck.
Amphibious type?
Yeah, you know, it looks just like a boat, but they drive on land. They took us to Rome one night, so we'd be there in the morning when all the activity was around the Vatican.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, how did you get from Italy to southern France?
Well, again, we girls went on a hospital ship, but he made the invasion on those kind of things where you see all the pictures where they put the walk down and you come ashore, you know, and
LSTs and LSDs?
Yeah.
well, whatever. And it must not have been too bad because they were walking back up there so somebody could take a picture of them again. So we were very lucky that the Germans were on the run then, and the invasion of southern France left very few dead. And then we girls went over and we started setting up. I think the first place we set up was Tigny and
Aix in the province.
Aix. Aix was the first place. From now on, I'll get these places all mixed up because we moved right with the troops.
You moved up into France?
Ultimately, we went all the way through France, and then we made the curve and came around, and we ended up at the war's end in Munich. We made that curve around. And we were in many different places. Plus, sometime in that last 6 or 8 months, there was an outfit that had been thrown together in the States and come over there, and I guess they were in bad shape, and somebody in Washington got in touch with our outfit and asked if somebody would go up there and look it over. And so Wallace said, well, so why don't some of us go? And so he and you, and was it Major Stone? Any other men? No. And we 3 girls again. We went to another outfit called the 132nd, and we were always very close to the 27th, so we could get back and forth and visit and so forth.
At this time, we'll take a short recess.
Okay.
Now we're ready to continue, and we've added another person to our group. This is Dr. Cross, who was with Helen over in Europe, and And at this time, we'll have the doctor and Helen explain to us just how they were organized in order to take care of the wounded.
Well, first, I have to say, now, we were not married. In fact, a nurse, if she did decide to get married, they were sent home. Isn't it funny now? That seems so funny.
So could you tell, one or both of you, tell us what you were telling us when the camera was off,
Well,
how your group was organized?
He knows more about it because he was in Chicago and at the University of Illinois. And
Okay, Doctor.
so it's up to him.
Roland?
During the war, medical schools formed affiliated units. Most of them were general hospitals, but a few were evacuation hospitals, which were closer to the front line. Dr. Pusto, who was a surgeon at the University of Illinois, through Dr. Rankin, or A-N-K-I-N, in the personnel office in Washington, D.C., made arrangements to form an affiliated unit at the University of Illinois, the 27th Evacuation Hospital. Now, in an affiliated unit, the personnel join the unit, and then when they're completely formed, the unit joins the Army. And you have a promise from the Army that they will not move anybody out of the unit without their permission. Normally, you see, they transfer people around like so many matchsticks, but in an affiliated unit, they don't do that.
I see.
Now, we were organized as a 750-bed hospital. And after they got going, they realized that that was too large and it was unwieldy. And most of the evacuation hospitals were 450-bed hospitals, about half that size. That's why we didn't go overseas real early. They didn't know what to do with us. But when they came time to go into Africa and Italy, they assigned us to support the French, because the French didn't have any Frenchmen until they landed in France. They were using almost entirely colonials, Senegalese, Gooms, and Moroccans from the French colonies. And so, with a 750-bed hospital, we were ideal for that. They assigned us to support them. None of these French colonials could speak either French or American. So we had 2 French Red Cross girls assigned to us. They would speak in French to the sergeants. The sergeants would speak in their native language to these Gooms, Moroccans, and Senegalese. Then they would come back up the line and speak to the sergeants, and the sergeants to the Red Cross workers, and the Red Cross workers to us. Now this, of course, was time-consuming. So the result was, in general, we didn't talk to enlisted men. We would take them to the operating room. We wouldn't tell them what we were going to do. We wouldn't explain to the operation or nothing. We'd take them and we'd cut on them and send them back to the tent without them having any idea of a permit. You couldn't do that with American troops, but with the French, we did.
I see. Okay. Now you're in, how did you know, go back to you now, Helen, how did you know when to move? Where did your orders come from to move your hospital? Like you said, you come up into France and then made a loop over and ended up in Munich. How did you know to move your hospital?
Well, I wasn't in headquarters. I obviously it came.
Army would send.
It came from above. Obviously,
In Italy, we were in the 5th Army. In France, we were the 7th Army. Headquarters had a medical detachment, and they would tell us when to move. And we would basically leapfrog. As the front line advanced, you would leap from your rear position to the front. And you'd be stationary for a while the line moved ahead of you. And the other units would get farther and farther behind. Finally, the back one would leapfrog you to the front again.
I see.
On orders from the Army.
Okay.
once they got us too far. I'll tell you, when you go for a walk and you see the cattle and they're all blown up and nobody has used the meat or anything and it's very quiet, you know you're ahead of the line.
Back to you now, Helen. How were you treated by the French civilians? You know,
Fine. In fact, I remember at when we were first, I think Epinal, when we were first in France, hadn't been there too long. I must have been on night duty and probably getting up in late afternoon, and two teenage girls were looking, they'd gone to headquarters, and they were looking for someone, their mother wanted to have them to tea. Some of the girls, I guess they knew. And I said, well, okay, because we didn't have to go on until 7. And so there were about 4 of us, and we walked with the 2 girls, who of course we couldn't talk to, but we were friendly, through the woods. And then it was just like Hollywood would show, big chateau, beautiful. Couldn't even see it from where our camp was. And it was just like the movies. It was lovely. Maybe something like this home here. And they had the tea and little sweet things put out, but they didn't have any sugar. When you would bite into them, they were made without sugar. And of course, she apologized. The lady was very nice. And all those people in Europe speak a little bit of English, and somehow or other you get back and forth, and we did that, and we enjoyed it. It's one of my memories. And when we left, she said, I'm so glad to meet you girls, because there were rumors spreading around that you were over there for the entertainment of the men. She says, I know you're not. So.
What was the closest, Helen, that your hospital was set up to the front, for example, where the battles were taking place?
Well, like I said, when we got up to a place called Haguenau, it was Christmas, we were ahead of the lines. I don't know how it happened, but we were ahead. And
Did you see German troops?
No, we didn't. In fact, they always let us alone. I know one of the places we were much later than that, there would be a plane come over every evening, bed check Charlie, I think maybe you've heard that expression.
Yes.
And he would go so slow you'd think he'd fall out of the sky. He'd just go right over the top of our trees and look at us. Of course, there were red crosses on all the tents. And they never came and bothered us at all. And as I said before, we took the same kind of care of the German prisoners as we did the German wounded, as we did us, and so possibly they knew that, I don't know. But the Haguenau, it was Christmas time, and we were just getting set up, and then we drove all night back to wherever the place was that we had come from. I think Baccarat or something.
What it was it was the time of the Battle of the Bulge, and they pulled the American troops out of 7th Army and shifted them over to support the American Battle of the Bulge. And at that moment, we were behind the German lines, but the Germans didn't know it either.
Were you near the Battle of the Bulge?
Well, not too far,
really.
about 30 miles.
Well, but it was a different army, right?
Yeah, it was Patton's 3rd Army.
Yeah,
And
I know just about. You were
functioning
right near, I was trying to think of the name of that town.
We were in near Sarber. We were in Alsace-Lorraine
Right.
on the west
You
bank
weren't
of the
too far
Rhine.
from that little country there.
Liechtenstein.
Yes.
I mean,
Luxembourg
what?
Luxembourg?
Luxembourg.
You're not very far from there.
Right,
That's a beautiful area in through there.
beautiful area.
And you had hospitals set up in that general area?
At Haguenau.
One after another, lots of time.
You were getting, Helen, you were getting quite a lot of casualties, injuries from
yes.
that area?
Oh, yeah. We just, you put them on the table on a stretcher, and we would keep the stretchers on the ground outside of surgery, so as soon as the table was empty, boom, we went as fast as we could.
We'd worked in 12-hour shifts.
Yeah, we were always
Yeah.
12
12
hours.
Okay.
hours on, 12 hours off.
You saw, of course, some horrible things. What was the basis, and how would you determine? I'm gonna speak the person I can think of right now that everybody sees on TV all the time. It's Senator Dole, who was terribly injured in Italy. A person that's that badly injured, how long would you try to treat him, or would you try to airlift him to get him to where there is more facilities?
They didn't have airlift in those days.
They didn't.
That's Vietnam War.
You did. In other words, they'd have to take him out with an ambulance.
Right.
And now ahead of us, okay, we're an evacuation hospital. Ahead of us was something called a field hospital. They're very small and they move very fast. And they're almost like an emergency room. If it's something real bad, they try to take care of it or get it to a general hospital back in Paris. Not to say that our wounds were horrible too, but there was somebody always ahead of us, these little field hospitals.
You were mentioning the Germans and that you treated them. Who brought the German wounded to you?
American ambulances.
I don't know, I didn't take part in that.
American ambulances.
American ambulances brought them to you.
That's all that could operate behind the
No.
American lines.
We did do one thing that maybe wasn't too nice, but on each shift, it was a 12-hour shift. And the Germans that were outside there, they waited to the end unless they had a life-threatening thing. Then, of course, we brought them in. But then we would do all the Germans that were left on the 12-hour shift. Then you'd start another shift.
Could they speak any English?
Occasionally.
Would you think, Helen, that
Not much.
could you tell just what they thought about this? Were they afraid that maybe they were going to be injured more, or do you think they appreciated it?
Well, of course, the Germans did all those horrible things, but I never saw one of them that didn't act very nice, you know, and so forth. But I was telling you about the SS person, that you can recognize an SS because whatever pieces of uniform. And I can assure you they didn't come to us in pajamas and so forth. There was usually some sort of uniform left on, either the top or the bottom or whatever. And when you see the black and the white, then that's an SS. And this one night, he just kept trying to stop me, whatever I was doing. I was preparing him to get ready for the surgeon, and he wanted to tell me something. And so I thought, well, maybe he's allergic to something, whatever. So I sent one of the boys, I said, run, get somebody that can speak German. So he came back with someone. And here's an SS person, and what he wanted to tell me was that he couldn't stand pain, and that his whole life he had not been able to stand pain. So I don't know what he thought. Maybe he thought we weren't going to give him an anesthesia.
We also had a certain number of French peasant farmers who had stepped on landmines.
Oh, yes, we had things like that happen.
When you treated them, and they were, did you put them in your hospital then, somewhere? Did you separate them from the Americans?
Yes. The
All
general.
right, supposing a man was in there, but he was well enough to go back to his unit. Did you then send him to a prison of war camp?
Correct. The German.
The German.
Right. But the French peasants, farmers, we evacuated them back to our own general hospital, who in turn turned them over to civilian hospital.
What was the highest ranked officer of the Germans that either one of you treated?
I don't know.
We didn't look at rank.
No. Didn't pay attention to that.
It was a person. That was
Person.
it.
Not a rank.
Nothing
I'm
like
asking
that.
that more for curiosity than.
No, I don't know. Maybe on the wards, maybe the girls knew, but we didn't pay any attention at all to something like
Yeah.
that.
Okay, especially around where things were so furious there in the Battle of the Bulge. What did you wear?
Well, they never did the whole war. They never really came out with a real uniform for we girls.
Did you have a helmet?
Oh, sure. Oh, sure.
Did that have a red cross on it too?
No.
Did yours, Doctor?
We had those in the States when we were learning and so forth and so on. One time they sent us, we girls, it was real hot in Italy, and they sent us in what you could call a uniform for work. It was a little tiny brown and white striped seersucker. And they said a pair of pants and a shirt, and then this wraparound dress, which was totally useless because the girls in the ward are bending way over these cots and so forth. You can't have a wraparound dress coming apart there and coming apart here. So those were useless. That's the only time they really sent us in a uniform. Now, when you ask, like in France there, when we're wearing one of the boys' pair of pants that they got for us, that sort of mustardy looking wool, and shirts, just like the enlisted men would wear, but of course we always had our officer insignia on them. That's what we wore.
Mm-hmm.
They never really came out. Now, in the States, they finally got stores where you could shop for uniforms, and we could shop for a dress uniform. They had a navy blue dress and a light beige dress that you put stuff on. It wasn't for work, it was like to go out in. They had an overcoat, which I bought someplace for girls, but they never did get around to sending in the supplies for us in real clothes. We wore the men's clothes.
Were you anywhere near, there's some beautiful German villages where the Battle of the Bulge took place. Did you get around any of those German villages where the fighting was so intense from building to building?
No. We were in a lot of villages like Danhausen, Weinheim, and so forth. Oh, well, they had all had battles, but we weren't over where the Bulge was. We were on this
You were 30 miles.
tight turn that went around and a different army and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
But we were in lots of villages.
How'd you keep warm?
Well, I don't know about everybody, but everybody brought a sleeping bag of some sort. But Dr. Wallace, before the war, he said, now you're going to have to be outside. You should have a down sleeping bag. Of course, we girls didn't know anything about any sleeping bags. And he ordered them from Abercrombie and Fitch, which they still have in Chicago. And I still have mine in the garage. I don't know if I opened it up, it might be solid moss. I don't know. But so we had our down sleeping bag. They would issue us blankets too.
I know from some of the interviews that we've done previously, it was terribly cold. It was on Christmas.
Oh, lots of times we had heavy snow when we were in France.
The Battle of the Bulge, took place right at Christmas time, and it was a lot of snow. And,
that's probably
okay.
when we were retreating
Yes,
from Magna.
One time I was assigned a 6x6 truck and told to go into town to an old army barracks and to get as many stoves as I could find. So I went in there and I took stoves out of these buildings, put them on the truck and brought them back. And we set them up in our places where we lived. And we had heat in the house, in the tents and in the buildings.
We always had a stove in the tent where we lived.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in the States, we always had a stove.
Mm-hmm.
I remember once in Elkins, we had a big ash pit in between, a big square hole that the men had dug that we were supposed to put our ashes in. And it was in between the officer's tent and the nurse's tent. And one night, one of the officers who we didn't like to was walking across there and fell in there. And so everybody was yelling from the hey, come see him in the ash pit.
The ash pit. Okay, now the Battle of the Bulge was right around the turn of the year 45, as the war was starting to end. 44, and then, yes, end of 44. And, let's see, D-Day was June of 44. Were you able to, well, let me ask you this, Helen, how were you able to keep up with the progress of the war in Europe plus the Japanese front?
Very poorly. We had, once in a while, we got a hold of the Stars and Stripes. I know when they finally dropped that atomic bomb when we were in community, and we heard about it, and you know, now they try to make everybody feel so guilty about that atomic bomb. And we were so glad to know that there was something out there that we didn't know a thing about, but now, you know, they make it sound so criminal that we dropped it, and possibly it was, but
Well,
we didn't feel that way when we heard it.
it saved, the estimate is 1 million Americans would
They
have died.
were
I'm
staging,
probably one of them because I was just about ready to go over there.
they were staging us to go to the Pacific.
Yes.
Our war was over.
Yes,
and-
Roland.
Part of our personnel, though, were actually on boats going to the Pacific, had been detached and being sent, and they were turned around in mid-ocean and came to the United States.
We were all going to have to go,
Yeah.
and we were tired.
I bet you were. Now, in Munich, was the war still going on when you went into Munich? War had ended?
It was almost ended, wasn't it?
It was ended at Tannhausen.
We went into Munich and set up at a palace they have outside, sort of like a suburb called Nymphenburg. And we used the grounds of that. We didn't use buildings at all. We used the grounds of that for our hospital. We had a...
You mean the Nymphenburg Castle?
Yeah, have you been there?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, well, we were on the grounds. The girls...
That's where...
We lived in back of it, and our hospital was like in their front yard. You know, the grounds
That
outside.
lake out in front? That's where Crazy Ludwig drowned.
Yeah.
He grounded Starnberg.
Oh, did he?
Steinberg, yeah. But I was going to tell
That's
you,
what they called him, so I used the word crazy.
we had something so sad happen there. Now, I don't want to cry, like you said, some of the people had. It was lovely. It was spring, and it was beautiful back there where we lived in tents, of course, but on the grounds. But it was the end because we began to, if we could hire civilians then to do things. And there was this jolly, wonderful man they hired to help. He was a cook, and they helped in the mess tent. And he would bring his little grandson, who was about 8, I think he was supposed to be 8. And he would run around and bring people things at the table and so forth, and laughing, and the grandfather was always laughing and joking, just like somebody who was very active in a restaurant or something.
Yeah.
And one day, thank goodness, I wasn't in the mess tent. The little boy ran out through the ropes of the tent, and he was killed. There was a landmine, I don't know.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
I don't know how that could happen, and I don't know if, I don't know what they found when they looked into it, because if you could put a tent up with all those ropes, you know, and in between the ropes, and nobody stepped on it, so did somebody come around in the middle of the night and plant a new one or something? This little boy, he gets it.
I finally thought of the name of the town near where the Battle of the Bulge was, and it's Bitburg.
No,
Does that ring any bells with you, Roland?
We weren't there.
no.
Weren't even close.
But it was a beautiful town. What, Helen, how did you find Munich? What did Munich look like when you got there?
Well, it was in pretty good shape, and it was very nice. And of course, another time, was that before Nymphenburg that we were set up in that insurance building?
No, later.
Later, we lived in Nymphenburg, and we took over an old insurance building and made a hospital out of it in a building which is quite luxurious after the tents and so forth. And the people were very nice to us, you know, very polite. And
When I just happened to think of something when you talk about Nymphenburg. When I was there, they showed us a part of the Nymphenburg that had been hit by a bomb.
no, I don't remember that. Do you? No.
One corner of it, they said had been hit.
Well, it must have. I don't know that because I know there was the one little building out there with the swimming pool. Okay, you go right into the thing and you walk through and over to the left way in the back there was a building with a swimming pool in it.
They were making Nymphenburg china all the time we were there.
Yeah, and we have it
They
at
did.
home.
Well, maybe the guy, maybe I've got it mixed up with some other castle. That could be.
And over in back of the nurse's tent was had been a little old ice cream stand. And I hate to tell you this, but we did liberate ice cream freezer. And we went up the mess tent and asked the boys, do you know how you could make ice cream out of powdered milk. Well, we'll try. And so we had some ice cream.
Okay. We're just about to the end of the war now, right?
Yes.
When you're in Munich.
Oh, we skipped an awful lot in there.
Well, what did we, what important did we skip?
Well, it was one little town after another. We were out. One day, I know, I was walking over there. One of them had a park, and we used to walk across a little bridge over to the park when we were wanting to get a breath there. And I was walking with another one of the girls, and I said, why are those two Germans in uniform, and they're coming toward us? And why would they be? I don't know. So we kept walking slower, both them and us, and so they got to us, and with all this sort of trying to talk back and forth, they were wanting to know where they could go to surrender.
I see.
So now I've always been mad at myself. You should have taken them captive. But no,
yes.
I pointed them over there. I said, that's headquarters 10. Go
That
over
would
to
have
the
been great.
headquarters 10.
Okay. Then did you, from Munich, did you start coming home?
I did. The war.
How did you get from Munich to
The war was over, and I was called to headquarters 10, and they said, we have a message here from the Red Cross that we're to discharge you if you're agreeable, and because your brothers are on the way home, and your mother's sick. And so if you want to go, I said, yes, I want to go. And so I came home alone by plane, and it was interesting. I got to Paris, and I had these orders to go to some campus I didn't know. So I was in the airport, and there were some officers there, some young guys that didn't seem to be traveling. They were doing something. So I asked them, I said, do you know Paris? And they said, yes, we're stationed here. I said, okay, where is this place that I've got to go to? And they said, oh, that's 40 miles out of town, and the last train is gone. And so they said they'd have to find me a billet. So they took me and found this old hotel where they billeted people like me. But they decided the room wasn't safe. So the three of us stood in there and figured out how, when I went to bed that night, how I could move the furniture into front of the door so that I would be safe. I thought that was so sweet of them, and I wish I knew their names so I could say thank you. So then they said they'd come back and take me to dinner. And so, okay, they came back, and the war was over here now, so things were getting, back to normal. And it was some lovely hotel. I wish I knew the name of that, but I don't. And you know how it used to be, the hotels would have a little dance floor, and then they'd have a floor show, So, of course, we had a table right on the edge of the dance floor. And so the floor show comes on, and it's these two ballroom dancers, man and this girl. And she had on this long black chiffon thing. And they were swooping all over. You know how that goes? So they came to our table, and it turns out what she had on was like long chiffon pajamas. But you didn't know that. It looked like a skirt. And so she does something that's something like a cartwheel right by our table. I don't know if I should put this on film. And so the legs of this thing goes down, and she doesn't have any underpants on. So here I am with three boys that I just met 4 hours ago, and 2 foot away from our table is this whole view. And nowadays, everybody would be stamping their feet and yelling and laughing and everything. We were looking at the ceiling and talking about very strange things and so forth and so on. So they were very nice. And one of them came back the next morning and got me on the right train. And that camp was a little bit interesting. I didn't know where I was going. And it turns out to be a WWII camp. That's the women's.
Sure.
And I had never even seen a WWII before, because they are always in some headquarters or something. And they were running this whole camp out in the country in tents for females like me who were en route home. And I know there were big long tents, and the 10th field that was always up ahead of us. The nurses from the 10th field were there in that tent with me, and we were going home and so forth. And so anyway, I think I was there about 3 days, and flew to New York. I can't even remember where it was, and to Fort Sheridan, and finally got to Indianapolis, where my folks met me, and that was
it. When we talked on the telephone earlier, you mentioned, was that a POW, or was that a German extermination place, that Dachau? Was that what it was?
Yes, we were close there. And
tell us about that if you can.
Well, well, we had heard that this was going on, but first I'll tell you, if I had known what those camps were like, one of these little towns we were in, I think it was Weinheim, and I think it was the same one that I was talking about before, the bridge. But anyway, I was going for a walk over to this little park, and I saw two men who were obviously prisoners from the concentration camp, because they wore these sort of striped pajama things. And they made bicycles in this town. I think that was Weinheim, wasn't it? Where they made bicycles, do you remember? Neckerson, okay. And so maybe that's why he had a bicycle. But there was this little boy, 8 or 10 years old. He had a bicycle, and they were taking it away from him. And like you say, you can't speak German and so forth. But I didn't like the looks of the two men dragging this bicycle. The boy was crying. And like, you know, you make a motion, just a minute, you know, I'm here. And so I motioned to them. He's small and so forth. So they looked kind of sheepish and let go of the bicycle, and he rode off. Well, if I had seen the concentration camps before that, I probably would have told him to take it, you know. But then we were in Dachau, I think it was within 48 hours to see what it looked like after it was liberated. And that picture of Gail Young, she was from here, and Ruth, we all three went at the same time with Dr. Wallace. I don't know who else was there. And it was just unbelievable. The bodies, which are just bones with skin on them, they were just piled in pyramids all over the grounds. And I was in surgery, so I didn't have to work there, but some of our girls worked there for a few days, and we said, what in the world did you do? Because the stench was so bad that you felt like you weren't breathing air. It was just thick and heavy. And they said the only thing they did was go through the barracks and decide who was dead and who was alive so the boys could drag them out. And it was a terrible thing to see. It was unbelievable.
Were they enough alive to save any of them?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Were they Jewish people that
Well, yes, but I know a lady in Chicago, and she's from Poland, and she says lots and lots of Polish people were there, whether they were Jewish or not. So I don't know, but they obviously starved them to death and did all sorts of other things, and it was an unbelievable thing to see.
Is that one of the places where they annihilated them too?
Yes, sure.
Exterminated them?
Sure.
They had an oven there.
They had an oven there.
Right.
They did the whole thing.
We made the people from Dachau, the Army did, come out and look at it.
Yes, the day we were there, the town was about 2 miles, wasn't it, down the road? And as far as you could see, they made the civilians from this town come out and walk through this camp. And they were about 6 wide on the side of this road, and you could see them coming all the way from the town. And they made them, the Germans, walk through there. And when we drove past them, I could see a lot of them crying. But they had to know what was going on, because the smell, I'm sure you would...
Horrible.
I'm sure that certainly covered that town.
Horrible. It's horrible.
But I don't know if you're in a situation like that. I don't know what you can do. I mean, it obviously got out of hand, and I don't know, a German civilian. I don't know how they felt, and I don't know how helpless they
Oh,
were.
that's terrible.
Obviously, there's lots of cases in the written up where the Germans helped to hide someone who was Jewish and so forth. So it certainly wasn't every German. But like I say, that SS guy, they were really active in that, and he's telling me that he can stand pain.
Yes. I believe at this time, Mr. Cameraman, we will take a short recess. Okay, we're back on camera here now, and Helen has some pictures and some other things she'd like to show us. So, Helen, what do you have there first that you'd like to show?
Well, there's me when you say, is that you?
Yes, that's a nice picture.
Can you get it?
Got it. That's good.
Okay. And then they asked me to bring along a few things, so I didn't have too much to bring, but I got a couple of German hats here. This is that one, that bad SS guy. Can you see that?
Okay.
And inside it says, the Reichsfuhrer SS. I don't know what the rest, you know what I mean?
No, I...
Other two things.
Yeah, how did you get those? How did you get those?
I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know.
What else you have?
And this is typical of the way our hospital was set up. This happens to be in Maddaloni, north of Naples, about 20 miles north of Naples. Can you get that?
I think I got
Better
that.
she tilted a little bit.
Tilt it? I don't know, but I feel like
Top
I'm making
back.
it shake.
Yeah.
Don't you think that'd show up better?
It looks good on the screen, so I think it's coming through.
Okay, you got it?
Okay. That's
Very good. Very good.
Here's a picture of the gentleman you just saw sometime or other during the war. Can you see that? That's that little brown and white seersucker stuff that I told you about.
Oh, yes.
Can you get that?
Okay.
Nice looking couple. Still are.
But now you're just trying to make up with me. I don't know if you can get this, but this is the three girls from Crawfordsville. Now, one was Gail Young. She was our chief of the operating room in Crawfordsville at Culver Hospital. And the other one is Ruth Steinkamp. She was a surgical nurse here in Crawfordsville. And myself in Paris on a sightseeing tour.
Okay, that looks real good in the
And
screen.
you have no idea that song. I always think of April in Paris, you know. It sounds so good. We were there in April.
Was it pretty?
We were so cold, we went to bed and everything we had, because they hadn't had any heat, I suppose, for all the war years. And it was so cold and everything is so damp and wet, you know, that we were in a nice hotel, but we were freezing. So when I hear that song, April in Paris, I think, oh yes. This is one of our nurses that sort of gives you an idea of what your tent looks like inside.
We had a photographer who followed us around quite often as a part of public relations. He later became the official photographer for Nixon as the President of the United States.
That's
And
interesting.
that was taken by him, and it was published in the newspapers here in the United
Here's
States.
his name, Ollie Atkins, and he worked for the Saturday Evening Post, and he would have had tons of pictures of our people and our stuff. I just wish I knew where his things went, because he quite often came and visited us. This was the little girl here dancing. She was the one that got in trouble in the latrine. Miss?
I don't know whether you can
No,
pick that one up.
I don't think you
These may be too small, cameraman.
Yeah, let's see what I have that's kind of big. This was one of Ollie Atkinson's pictures. Atkins, not Atkinson. Pictures that made a lot of magazines during the war.
What is the picture?
This girl was from Indianapolis. Her name was Margaret. And it's just an award.
She got married during the war, too.
But this, yeah,
With Sergeant Halliburton.
this is her picture when at a wedding after the war ended. They had a wedding overseas for her.
Interesting.
Same girl that was just in that picture.
Okay. Is that about it on the pictures?
Well, I think all of these are probably too small. Can you get a picture? This is what surgery looked like when we were in a luxurious building. Can you see that?
Okay, that looks good on the screen.
We were very lucky when we could find a building that nobody was using. But see, you ask if we train. See, we're trained. There's the nurses over there. You see.
Sure.
Can you? The nurses are way over here in the corner, but they're training us. Can you see that?
Yeah. Okay.
And
Now, I believe you said you had medals with you.
yes, but I don't know. They'd show up. It took me years and years and years to get those medals. For every ribbon you get,
You got your ribbons with
you're
you.
supposed to have a medal if you ask for them. And he asked for his, and he got them in the mail. His brother asked for them, he got them in from the mail. It took me about 5 years. I finally got them about 2 weeks ago. I was so surprised.
What do you think, Mike? Do you think we...
I think we can get them. Just
You wanna see
hold
them?
them out and we'll,
Well,
or even just open
well-
the lid to the box. We can.
there's,
That's fine.
There's 5 of them.
Yeah.
This is the one with the battle stars. There's 4 battle stars.
What were the 4 battles? Bulge.
Well, they're listed. I can't remember things like that. You know, the Army.
Italy, Africa, and Germany. Italy, France, and Germany.
European, African, Middle Eastern. I don't know. You know, the Army decides that. And
Yeah.
it really isn't
What's that?
important then. Army of Occupation. They really aren't.
I thought that.
They really aren't important things. They're just things, you know, every so often you get a ribbon for something or other, you know, those you see all over the pockets of people. But there's also, it turns out, a
Cover
medal.
the medal. You know,
What?
the things
That's the
cover the
American
medal.
theater there.
Okay. I got that one. Now let's go to the third one. And what's that one for?
This?
No, the one in your right hand.
American campaign. What do you suppose American campaign is?
That's any time that you got off the coast. I've got one of those. What's this one right here, Helen?
Oh, this doesn't have any writing on it. It says Women's Army Corps. How about that?
That's a good one. Okay.
Yeah, it is. I'm glad we're seeing these. We do. I don't think, Mike, that we've got anything like this in our...
And this says Victory, World War II.
Okay,
Okay.
Is that all?
that's it. Yeah, thank you very much. I want to back up just a little bit here, Helen and Roland, and find out the date of your marriage.
Oh, let's see. We got home in the fall and we got married on March 23rd.
1946.
Six.
I see. And you now live in...
A suburb of Chicago. We always... Well, I'll tell you what happened. After we got back from the war, Colonel Pusto, the one that was instrumental in organizing the 27th, then he became the chief of surgery and offered all the boys that hadn't had a residency. So they grabbed it because everyone was coming home from the war, you know, and so many of them hadn't had a residency yet. They'd had internships, but so Roland had a residency at Hines. With Pusto was out there too in downtown, and Jay did too, right? And
I still work there.
That's what you're
47
doing.
years.
Do you have children?
2 daughters.
Are they married?
Yes, they're both married.
Do you have grandchildren?
2, the smartest, the prettiest ones you've ever seen.
Right. Boys or girls?
Boy and a girl.
Boy and girl. Isn't that great? That is great.
10 and 8.
Yeah. What did you had children, what did you do after the war ended? Did you go back and do any nursing? Did you go back to work as a nurse?
Well, see, I came home early, and so I went back to Culver to work. But then in March when I went to Chicago and got married, no, I didn't work then.
Didn't work anymore.
Well, that was back in the days when you were supposed to be a housewife.
Well, you still are.
Of course, I was in a one-room apartment, so I didn't work too hard. But I learned to take the L downtown to
Yeah.
shopping in Chicago.
Well, this has been a most interesting interview, Helen.
Well, I'm glad I wasn't as nervous as I thought I'd be.
you-
I couldn't sleep last night. I was worried
Oh,
about
you
this.
did just great. And are you going to see your brother Jack while you're here?
That's the main reason I'm here. I'll have dinner with him tonight there.
You
Because
tell him
their year has a reunion the same time. Our
You
year.
tell him I said hello,
Okay.
and I'd like to see him.
And I can't understand you not having a picture of Chud.
Yeah, well, we interviewed him, but he didn't. So, on behalf of the American Legion, of which I am a past commander, and the Montgomery County Historical Society, and the people of Montgomery County, and the people of America, I want to thank you for what you and your husband did for America during World War II, and I want to thank you so much for this interview. Thank you very much.
Well,